Okay, welcome to today's Spielsachen, another compact creation. If you remember the last outing here, I had this rack here and together with it a cord Volca. Now it's gotten smaller. What I'm trying to play with this is drums and one synth voice. Would even be possible to play a second one, although with some limitations. And for playing the drums, I'll be using the Expertsleeper's Disting, more specifically its I1 algorithm. This video is divided in the following 4 parts. The first one, I'll briefly explain how the setup works, how this Rene sequencer is controlling the Disting. In the second part, I'll play briefly with it. In the third part, I'll be elaborating on alternatives, how to use the Disting for different styles of drum work. And finally, in the fourth part, I'll discuss the setup and also discuss how we can even make it more compact than one 104 HP box and one power feed. And as said, I'm going out into the mains right from here. So this is really all I need. One power feed, this brick, everything's fine. In this algorithm, I can re-trigger the playback of a looped sample with a trigger or a gate, and then it starts from the position that comes from the CV input. Now the CV here comes from the X channel and the gate goes also from the X channel, the Y channel controlling the synth. Let's start by providing clock. It's coming from the no coast and see what it sounds like. As you can hear, there's a kind of a let's say slapback delay. This is not coming from the delay effect here. The delay effect sounds something like this. No, it doesn't, because it's going to the synth voice, but because the clock is moving slightly slower than the actual drum groove. I'm sending the audio through 2 VCAs for true stereo and have that triggered with the ADSR, so if I mute individual steps, I can do something like this. Now the knobs go up. It's kind of hard to see really in a position moving up, so each step is triggering the actual next step, and I'm also using the quantizer here. By changing the quantization, I can affect some kind of a dragging or rushing. Kinda fun, I think. And by changing the snake pattern, I can also have it work in a different way. And by using the excess, I can move it to, for example, a 3/4. Now let's add the synth. Okay, in this now next I'll explain a little bit more about the details of this algorithm. So more specifically how this CV control works. So in the end, every time I send a gate, the sample loop starts to play from the position that is indicated with the CV input. Now for the whole length of the sample, it's using a 0 to 8 volt input, which means that the way this sequencer works, if I put it into a quantized setting and make it go over 4 octave, it will cover exactly half of the entire sample, which means if it's a 2-bar drum loop, then it will obviously cover 1 bar of it. Dividing that bar down, that means each octave, each 1 volt range, then corresponds to 1 quarter note if we're thinking 4/4, and that means each 16th note corresponds to 3 chromatic steps. And that's the way I set up the quantizer here. And you obviously can change the way those playback positions are set. The problem is this is a really somewhat fidgety kind of setting this up, so once I go there I can never go back properly. And the usual tricks with doing different bar length, etc. also work. Tuning those things, of course, the latch mode helps. But this is actually kind of fun. So there's different algorithms for that thing. I can also, by turning down the release time, can do something like this. So there's different algorithms for audio playback within the Disting. Another one is the one with playback speed controlled by CV, which means in this setup, which I haven't prepared, I would send a gate at the beginning of every bar to re-trigger the sample, and then I can pitch it around some way. Another version would be the clocked version. This is actually preferable if you have some kind of want to have that kind of drum and bass style pitched sound. I'm gonna try this right now. This is the clocked one, which now doesn't properly work, but if I send it something like a clock, you can hear that it's going fast, and if I bring down the clock radically, unfortunately in this algorithm the X is the re-trigger, so I can still use the same thing to have it re-trigger at the input, if I wire this differently and provide the clock directly to the Y input, the problem is you can then control the retrigger position with the C input. However, here the C input is quantized to -5 to 5 volts due to the hardware architecture of the Disting. For that, I could easily use, for example, the SQ1, but would lose some of the fancy options I'm making use of here. So that one has a mode for 0 to 5. I'd be using the second half of a 2-bar loop. There's also one where you input the actual playback position, so using an oscillator, a slow LFO or a slow VCO like this one, and inputting a triangle to control the playback position, then using an adder like that one, and adding bipolar offsets, you could achieve around the same thing and would also be able to do some kind of a scrubbing and going into reverse, etc. kind of effect. So, and finally, let's move to the options of making this setup even more compact. So, the way it looks right now, the only items in this box I'm actually using are, as you can see from left to right, that summing mixer, the VCA, the ADSR, obviously the Disting, the Rene, and the No Coast. So if I would fit that into a case which provides power supply by its own, that's 91 HP, not a lot saved here. So I could throw out more space by getting rid of that really huge No Coast. For example, replacing that with the Nanutzwerk, which I already have. I will then need some kind of a clock, or rather slow square wave thing. I'm using the 2 HP LFO here, and I'm also using the more slim IntelliGel Unity mixer here. And with that, we are already down to 70 partitions. And by deciding to find another source for the clock, which actually is easily possible because the Nanutzwerk also has an LFO, I could bring that down even more to, in that case, 68 HP, and that's pretty small. Going still smaller from here would then mean to have a look at the really big things that are in place. The Nanutzwerk is not the smallest voice module, so by opting for the new Döpfer A111.6 and also replacing the Rene with another 2-channel sequencer like the Qubit Bloom, I can bring that down even further. In that case to 36 TE. And finally, what's the theoretical minimum? Take 2 Distings, one of them as a, let's say, pitched sample voice, one of them for the drum loops. Use 2 HP sec as the sequencers on this one, 2 HP LFO to clock it, and a mixer to simply go mono and live with that. With that, we're down to 16 HP. However, we lose a lot of the interactive modification of the sequence, so that might most probably not be the preferred version. So with all that being said, there's a lot of cool things you can do with that Disting, and I really encourage you to, if you have one, to make use of that, and if you don't, well, then best get one right away. With that being said, have a nice day and enjoy your modular. Bye.